Right across the country, liberal cities are in a major crisis.
Maybe more than any other city, Seattle, Washington seems to represent what America is becoming.
This morning we found 24 people living on site.
We need more humane, more safe places for people to live and be.
We have 56 shelter beds available.
Puts the area on course for nearly $200 million in annual spending on the homeless.
It'll be clean for a while, but just like every other time they get done cleaning, everybody comes back, because where are they going to go?
The rent went up and up.
That's one of the reasons why we are where we are, because we started renting at $750 a little room. It was a little house, and then he raised it to $1,200. We want to go to $1,500. There's no way.
Let's take a look at liberal compassion in action. They're only generous with your money.
Do you think Seattle has a homeless problem?
Yes, I see it every day when I walk to work.
In the last 5 years, it's gotten steadily worse, with the numbers of people actually living on the streets rising at an exponential number.
The Puget Sound Business Journal estimates that Seattle and its outlying areas spend $1 billion addressing and responding to the homeless situation every year. And they say that number is almost certainly underestimated. Nonprofits, city and county budgets, police calls to homeless camps, hospital services, building tiny houses, drug treatment and outreach. Picking up needles, clearing out camps, garbage details, chain link fencing. And the more money we throw at the problem, the worse it gets.
You know, Como says Seattle is dying. It's not just because of the drug vagrants, but it's because of politicians who are going to forever change the look and feel of this city.
In 2015, Mayor of Seattle, Ed Murray, declared a state of emergency over homelessness, following the annual one-night count of that year that found 3,722 people without shelter in King County. Murray hoped to gain federal support and more aid to address the issue. Despite his actions, the number of people living in homelessness has continued to rise. The number of people living unsheltered has nearly doubled in 3 years. In 2018, the one-night count found 6,320 people on the streets. King County is the third largest concentration of homeless people in the country, following Los Angeles and New York City. To understand the root causes of the problem, we must look back at the history.
Seattle has experienced severe homelessness as far back as 1904, when the region near Pioneer Square was known as Shacktown. The mass population of homeless people was due to an increase in industrialization at the beginning of the 20th century. Those who struggled to get jobs in the new industries entering the Seattle area struggled to keep housing because of their line of work wasn't as prevalent. Into the 1920s, homelessness increased as Seattle continued to grow into an urban hub. Prior to the 1970s, however, homelessness was not a chronic problem. Instead, it rose and fell with the economic state of the country. The number of people in homelessness was low as housing was affordable and abundant. For low-income residents, Skid Road provided housing close to their work. In 1970, a fire at the Ozark Hotel, a place that provided homes for many Seattle residents, marked the beginning of decades of rapidly disappearing affordable homes. Following the fire, the City Council enacted the Ozark Ordinance, which restricted the occupancy of buildings without proper fire escapes and sprinklers. By taking away many buildings that once provided cheap housing, more people found themselves without shelter. At the same time as the housing restrictions went into effect, Boeing, the company that had provided jobs and economic prosperity to the region, began to lay off thousands of employees. In 1971, a billboard appeared near the airport that read, "Will the last person leaving Seattle turn out the lights?"
Seattle fought through the economic downturn and continued to develop. The World's Fair, the Kingdom, and the Freeway all encouraged this development. When the economy recovered, more and more affordable housing disappeared and was replaced by office space for new companies. It was estimated that between 1960 and 1980, 15,622 housing units were lost in the area comprising downtown, South Lake Union, and First Hill. Currently, there is an increase in technology jobs, putting workers in other industries in the same situation as people over 100 years ago. As of 2019, out of the homeless surveyed, the leading reason for their homelessness was job loss. As large businesses like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google increase job opportunities within the city, the less skilled workers fell behind economically. The big tech companies also take up prime real estate and raise housing costs. The cost of living in Seattle is 24% higher than the national average. Housing prices have risen 96% in the last 8 years, but the median household income has only risen 31% in the same time period. When big companies settle in Seattle, they bring a lot of jobs, which creates a higher demand for housing. This allows developers to put a high price tag on rents and spaces.
The Seattle government has begun to see housing costs as a leading cause of homelessness. There's a strong correlation between homelessness and rent prices. Mayor Jenny Durkan says in her State of the City address,
"We need more affordable housing."
Mandatory housing affordability was passed by the City Council. It plans to upzone 27 neighborhoods in Seattle. Upzoning requires that new buildings in rezoned areas either reserve 5 to 11% of space for low-income residents or pay between $5 to $32.75 per square foot to the Seattle Office of Housing Fund. In the current years, most Seattle neighborhoods are zoned for single-family homes. Upzoning will help to bring back more affordable housing throughout the city.
Jenny Durkan also suggests that we could keep people in their homes and off the streets by giving out rent payments. This technique proved effective in New Orleans under supervision of the Obama administration. When they gave out rent vouchers, homelessness dropped by 70%. The Obama administration claimed that affordable housing also contributed to the decrease in homelessness in NOLA. Seattle is giving a lot of money to solve the problem. Seattle promised to dedicate $34 million in 2017 to homelessness. The city plans on putting in more enhanced shelters, which provide more than just shelter. These enhanced shelters will include more case management and access to treatment, and are thought to more quickly connect people with housing.
While everyone in Seattle agrees that homelessness is a problem facing the community, they are split, however, on how to deal with the issue. Some believe that the homeless are drug addicts who need enforcement, while others believe they're people who deserve compassion. 24-hour media influences the beliefs of the public. Videos like "Seattle is Dying" show crumbling infrastructure, trash-filled homeless encampments, and mentally ill persons to portray the idea that Seattle is being ruined by the homeless. People have an idyllic memory of Seattle and think that the condition of the city has worsened. Crime rates tell a different story. Both violent crime and property crime rates are half of what they were in the 90s. Seattle is a better place than it ever was before. A poll done by the Seattle Times shows that Seattleites favor long-term solutions for the problem, specifically more affordable housing and mental health and drug treatment. They favor getting to the root of the problem over getting people off the streets. Most people believe that the government and businesses need to do more to address the problem.
In 2018, the City Council made a progressive move to place a tax on businesses that would help to fund affordable housing. The employee hours tax, called the head tax by the media, would have charged Seattle businesses making more than $20 million a year $275 per employee. While this seemed like a good option to help the city to get money to build affordable housing, companies like Amazon have held the city hostage by refusing to engage in conversations regarding the head tax. The tax was repealed by the City Council after 1 month because of pressure from the tech giant. Amazon threatened to leave Seattle if the tax passed and lobby for a referendum on the November ballot. Their campaign turned public support against the tax, and they ultimately succeeded. The tax showed how business interests and elected officials in one of America's most liberal cities are extremely divided over how to solve the growing crisis in Seattle. Many believe that the large tech companies that have taken over Seattle need to help with reparations for the displaced people they have produced. With an income tax illegal in the state of Washington, it raises a question. How are fiscally constrained cities supposed to find revenue as their populations and services grow? Businesses like Amazon would feel little impact from the tax like the one proposed, but they refuse to sacrifice any small portion of their earnings. The tax would make Amazon pay $10 million per year. They make $1.6 billion in a quarter. Amazon would not feel a difference, but $47 million a year for affordable housing would definitely make a positive difference in Seattle. Shannon Brown, a 55-year-old woman living in a homeless encampment in Seattle, said, I live in a little shed, but it's better than living in a tent or in a sleeping bag on the street. She also added, "There's no way I can afford to live in Seattle. I don't understand why businesses think it's wrong to help." Amazon, who makes over $260 million a day, should play a role in helping improve our city.
On June 10, 2019, Senator Bernie Sanders tweeted regarding Amazon and the head tax. Sanders wrote, "Amazon used its enormous wealth and power to kill a tax to build affordable housing in Seattle. 1 year later, thousands of people live on the streets, and the city continues to struggle with this crisis." Sanders, drawing attention to the homelessness crisis in the city, not only shows what his intentions would be if elected president in 2020, but it shows how the federal government is noticing this crisis in Seattle. It really has gotten that bad.
As we made this documentary, more headlines continued to appear with new developments on the state of the crisis. On June 12, 2019, the Seattle Times released a news story about money raised by Amazon, Microsoft, and other companies to build new housing. They gifted $48.8 million to help build 8 buildings for chronically homeless people. The money will go to Plymouth Housing, a Seattle nonprofit that works to provide housing and services to homeless people in Seattle. Amazon has also revealed plans to build a permanent location for Mary's Place.
Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO, said, "Mary's Place does incredible, life-saving work every day for women, children, and families experiencing homelessness in the Seattle community." He also added, "We are lucky to count them as neighbors and thrilled to offer them a permanent home within our downtown Seattle headquarters." Amazon employees and Mary's Place residents will move in together in early 2020.
Homelessness is a very current issue in Seattle right now. We will continue to hear more about it in future years, as a lot more needs to be done.